Alright, what's going on, guys? So the first session of the Elden Ring Nightreign closed network test just ended, and sincerely I hope you guys had a better time with it than I did. Sat there for 3 hours on PlayStation and only got to play for about 15 minutes. The servers were down for about 2 hours of that, and matchmaking only worked one time. Now first off, let me say obviously, this is a network test, this is not a free demo. That's the entire point. We knew this was going to happen, so we really can't be mad at Fromsoftware. It is disappointing waking up at 3 a.m. just to stare at a loading screen for 3 hours, but that is the point. That's the whole reason we're having a network test in the first place. So I'm not going to come on here today and complain and be a downer about it. Again, hopefully they improve this in the later sessions so we can actually get a good impression of the game. My team made it through day one. Before disconnects started happening, we started getting some lag and everything just fell apart. But for those 15 minutes, I was having fun, and I really hope they get the servers sorted to where we can actually play the game later on today and through the rest of the weekend. But in wake of all the network test info and impressions from influencers that got to play the game, there was a lot of other news that happened about Elden Ring Nightreign, such as a big showcase with Yasuhiro Kitao, looking at content that is not present in the network test but will be in the final game. We're going to go through all of that. More news about the DLC for Nightreign, surprisingly. But let's start off today by talking about what Fromsoftware had to say about the reason the servers were so bad for this network test. First of all, before we get into the specifics, Elden Ring did post this over on Twitter. The first session of the Elden Ring Nightreign network test has ended. We apologize for the inconvenience caused by the game server issues. Work is currently ongoing to improve the stability of the network test, and an additional network test session is being considered. Okay, so if they do end up doing another network test session, that would be fantastic. Again, it is important to know that this is not a free demo. Of course, people still want to play the game, obviously, but getting through all the server issues like we did today, that's the main point. Now, at the moment, it does seem like they extended the first session a little bit. I'm still able to be logged into the game, but of course, since the matchmaking doesn't work, there's not really a point. Now, one of the main problems they brought up was actually with PlayStation. The network test session as a whole seemed to work relatively fine over on Xbox. Maybe that's due to less traffic, but Fromsoftware PR did put out a tweet stating that there was a specific problem with the PlayStation servers, and that may be why, even though you can get into the game on PlayStation, you can't find a match, even with password matchmaking. Now, I'm no IT expert, but it does make me curious that the problems were this bad, even when they knew the specific amount of players that it would be hosting, because they only sent out a finite amount of codes. You know, I expected lag, I expected some connection issues, but to not even be able to play the game at all, that's a bit surprising. Of course, Fromsoftware and multiplayer have never been a great mix, but hopefully they get that sorted out really quick, and the following sessions can actually be played. But we'll see. Now let's talk about a bunch of news that came out. Very late in the evening yesterday, before the first session of the network test was set to go live, the Japanese gaming outlet Famitsu hosted what they called an emergency broadcast with Yasuhiro Kitao. And in this, they discussed a lot of details about what will actually be in the final version of the game versus the network test. Now, as you know, in the network test, we only get to fight one Night Lord, that being Tricephalus, and only explore one version of Limveld. But in the final version of the game, there will be a lot more variety, with procedurally generated geography that will differ every single time you load in, and many more world events that are not present in the network test at the moment, specifically mentioning things like volcanoes sprouting in the middle of the world, new swamps that weren't there before, although they did confirm that there are no poison swamps, and I quote, since Miyazaki is not the director. And in this live stream, we actually got a lot of new images of things like this. In this one here, we actually get a look at one of these volcanoes, and this takes up a massive amount of surface area. It does still appear to be in Limveld, but with a change this big, it'll feel like an entirely new biome. And we do have that clip from the original trailer of the player flying over a lava lake. That likely took place inside one of these volcanoes. We also have an image of one of the swamps that looks identical to what we saw in the original trailer as well. It appears to be Scarlet Rot reminiscent, but they did confirm that there are no poison swamps, so you likely won't get poisoned while traversing it, which I do think will ultimately make for better gameplay, but I'm sure somebody out there is going to miss poison swamps. We also got a new look at the ninja hero that is not present in the network test, who seems to be a heavier dex build along with Miracles, playing as a counter role to Duchess, and I really wish we got to try this one because I think Duchess is a bit too much of a glass cannon, so hopefully this one fills that niche. And then the final new image we got shows the Ramhorn helmet hero with the big axe fighting a troll boss. We still don't have much of any information on what this guy's role will actually be, likely a more strength-centric build than what Guardian currently provides, but we'll just have to wait and see on that one. This next image isn't necessarily new, but it gives us a good look at these entities that are outside the storm, that seem to be part of the overarching night theme. I hope we end up getting bits of lore in this game, even if it's not necessarily canon. There's still a lot of interesting things going on, and I would love to learn more about it. Now, one of the criticisms that a lot of influencers gave with their first impressions of Nightreign was that the game seems like it's going to be pretty light on content, and I mostly agree. But the network test that we're playing specifically does not have these random events that will drastically change the landscape, and so this was one thing they were leaning into in this showcase to demonstrate that in the final game, it's going to be different every single time. Now, how much of that is really going to provide a novel experience? Well, that's where my concern comes in. Since there are only 8 Night Lords, what does the quantity of sub-bosses look like? But speaking of novel experiences, let's talk about DLC, because we did get some more info on that. Now, we know the DLC is going to feature new heroes and new bosses, obviously, as well as new landscapes, and that'll be arriving sometime towards the end of the year. But also during this live stream, it was revealed that the DLC for Nightreign actually has not been created yet. Production hasn't even started, and they're not planning on starting it until after the May release, and I think that's a good thing. DLC for this game doesn't have to be huge, and based on the way the network test is right now, it does seem like they've got their hands full up until May. For the DLC, they could just give us 4 new heroes, maybe 4 new Night Lords, and create some more procedurally generated areas so that you have a different way to play every single time you do. That's really going to be the thing that makes Nightreign successful. Nightreign is going to live or die by replayability, and if I'm being honest, I don't think the procedurally generated areas are going to be enough to really do it. Now, of course, my opinion is very ignorant. We don't have the full game yet. We don't know the full scope of what those changes are going to look like, but the randomness has to be big enough to where people can't metagame. It shouldn't be possible for you to run the same build every time that you know is going to successfully beat the boss. And I think if people are able to do that, then they're going to finish the game and not want to go back through it. There has to be the opportunity for very far ends of the spectrum of luck that will drastically change the way your game plays out, and I really hope that manifests well in the final version of the game. But as for my impressions with the little bit of time I got to play, the only 15 minutes or so, I just really want to get to the final boss and see how that goes. This definitely doesn't feel like Elden Ring. It is absolutely way harder, and the bosses are changed up enough to where they feel fresh. But I really just want to get a good session of this game in. It was very upsetting to stare at a loading screen for 3 hours this morning, but I hope you guys had better luck with that than I did. If you did, let me know down below, what are your first impressions of Elden Ring Nightreign? Did you even get to play it? I just hope the next sessions are better so we all get to actually try it out. Shout out to Xbox for prevailing in this time, and it kind of sucks because I asked in the original registration for an Xbox code, yet they sent me a PlayStation code. Now, thankfully I have both consoles, but it would have been really nice to have the Xbox one this morning. But what are your concerns with Elden Ring Nightreign if you have some? If you didn't get a code and didn't get to play, what do you think based on the gameplay? I'm curious to hear all of y'all's thoughts, but either way, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Elden Ring Nightreign. But with all that, I will catch you in the next one.